The wind howled like a monster across the frozen wastelands of Thraxis. The snowstorm had covered the sky, making it impossible to tell if it was day or night. Raylan adjusted his thermal goggles and continued walking through the deep snow. He was the only human stationed at this edge of the galaxy. A simple explorer. A nobody. But today, everything was about to change. His scanner beeped suddenly. "Life form detected?" Raylan said out loud, confused. "Out here?" He looked around. The storm was so strong that he could barely see a few feet ahead. But the scanner kept beeping. He moved forward, step by step, his boots crunching against the ice. Then he heard it. A soft sound, faint, almost lost in the wind. A cry. He froze out. It wasn't the sound of a machine. It wasn't an animal. It was the sound of someone, a child crying. His heart pounded. He ran toward the sound, slipping over the hard ice. He reached a pile of half-buried rocks and snow. At first, he saw nothing. Then he gasped out a tiny alien. Girl no older than 6, lay curled up on the icy ground. Her skin was purple and blue, her hair like white silk, frozen stiff. Her eyes were half shut. Her small arms hugged herself tightly as she trembled violently. Her lips were purple. She was whispering something softly, over and over. "Mama. Mama. Mama." Raylan knelt beside her. "Oh no, no, no," he said, quickly pulling off his pack. He wrapped his thick coat around her and checked her vitals. She was freezing to death. He pressed his cum. "Base, this is Raylan, emergency. I found a child alien alive but frostbitten. Need evac now." The voice on the other end crackled through the storm. "Evac not possible. Storm too strong. You're on your own." Raylan looked down at the girl. Her fingers were stiff. Her body shook uncontrollably. She was fading. "I can't let you die out here," he whispered. He lifted her carefully into his arms. She was light, too light, like she hadn't eaten in days. She whimpered as he moved. "Shh. I got you," he said. Raylan ran back to his snowcrawler, a small survival vehicle parked behind a nearby hill. He climbed in, closed the hatch, and turned on the heaters. Then he laid the girl on a heated blanket and covered her with another. Layer. She looked up at him, barely conscious. "Mama," she whispered. Raylan paused. He wasn't her mother. He wasn't even her kind. But in that moment, her voice shattered something inside him. "No." "But I'm here," he said softly. He gave her warm drops of nutrient fluid. Her eyes slowly focused. She stared at him, not with fear, but confusion, as if wondering why a stranger would help her. "My name is Raylan," he said. "You're safe now." She didn't answer. She just reached out a trembling hand and touched the fabric of his coat, like she was checking if he was real. Hours passed. The storm raged outside, but inside the crawler, warmth returned to her small body. Raylan monitored her every few minutes. She didn't speak much, just whispered softly now and then, her voice like wind through broken glass. Then he noticed something strange. On her arm, just below the shoulder, was a small burn mark. It wasn't a wound. It was a brand. A circular symbol with letters he didn't recognize. He took a picture of it and scanned it into his tablet. No match in the known records. He muttered. Who was she? Why was she out in the storm? Where was her family? He sat beside her, confused and restless. This planet had no known settlements for her species. It didn't make sense. Suddenly, she stirred. Raylan leaned in. "What's your name?" he asked. She looked at him. Her lips moved slightly. One word came out. "Gone." He repeated. She pointed upward toward the ceiling. Or maybe toward the stars. "Sky, gone, Mama, gone," she said. Raylan felt a heavy ache in his chest. Someone had left her here. Or worse, someone had thrown her away. He looked at the small alien girl lying in his blanket, her eyes wet, her body still weak. She wasn't just cold. She was alone. And she had no one. Until now, Raylan made a silent promise right then. I don't know who you are, he whispered, but I'll protect you. I promise. The snowstorm outside roared louder, but inside the crawler, the girl finally closed her eyes and for the first time slept in warmth. The storm had passed, but the cold still lingered outside the snow crawler. Inside, the heaters hummed softly, casting a warm glow. Raylan sat near the girl, watching her chest rise and fall. She was still asleep, wrapped in layers of blankets, her small face no longer blue, but pale violet. He had stayed up all night, keeping the heater steady, checking her breathing, making sure she stayed warm. He didn't even remember falling asleep himself. When he opened his eyes again, she was awake and staring at him. Her big eyes were glowing softly in the dim light. She didn't speak, just stared. Hey, Raylan said gently, sitting up. You're safe now. Do you understand me? She didn't respond. Can you talk? He asked slowly. What's your name? Still silence. She looked around the crawler, her expression full of confusion and fear. Her hands clutched the blanket tighter. Then she curled into herself again, as if afraid she might vanish. Raylan's voice softened. It's okay. You don't have to be scared. He reached into his bag and pulled out a small protein biscuit. It wasn't tasty, but it was food. He offered it to her. She stared at it. Then, slowly, her hand moved. She took the biscuit, but didn't eat it. She just held it, looking unsure. Food, Raylan said, making a small biting motion with his hand. You can eat it. She sniffed it first, then took a small bite. Her eyes widened. She took another, and another. Within seconds, it was gone. Whoa, Raylan chuckled. You were hungry. She licked her fingers and looked at him again. There was something different in her eyes now, less fear, more curiosity. Raylan sat back, thinking. She didn't speak the trade language fluently. Or maybe she was too scared to. But she understood some words. He decided to try again. Name, he said, pointing to himself. I am Raylan. He waited. She blinked. He pointed to her. Gently. You. Name? She looked at his finger, then at her own small hands. No name? He asked softly. She shook her head. Just once, Raylan's chest tightened. He stared at the strange marking on her arm, the circle with jagged lines running through it. It didn't look like a family symbol. It looked official, governmental, or worse, a tag. He scanned it again, but still got no match. Raylan stood and walked to the back of the crawler where a small first aid box was stored. He pulled out a healing salve and returned to her. May I? He asked. She didn't answer. But when he moved closer, she didn't pull away either. He gently applied the salve to her frostbitten fingers. She winced but didn't cry. Her skin was healing fast. Alien biology, perhaps, but it still looked painful. You're strong, he said. You survived the ice. That's not easy. She tilted her head at his voice. Then to Raylan's surprise, she whispered, Mama. Gone. His heart skipped a beat. She remembered. Gone? He repeated gently. She nodded. Sky. Fire. Boom. Mama. Gone. Her voice cracked on the last word. She lowered her head. Raylan sat down slowly beside her. There was pain in her eyes, deep pain, like something terrible had happened. Something she didn't fully understand, but would never forget. He reached into his coat pocket and took out a small music chip. It was old, but it still worked. He slipped it into the panel, and soft, gentle notes filled the small space. Human. Lullabies. Songs from Earth. She looked around in surprise. This is music, Raylan said. It helps when you feel sad. She didn't speak, but her eyes blinked slowly and her breathing calmed. He brought out his datapad and opened a few images. Pictures of Earth, blue oceans, trees, sunlight, children playing. "This is my home," he said. She leaned forward, her hand brushing the screen. She seemed amazed. Then she pointed to the image of a little girl laughing in a field of flowers. Raylan smiled. "That's my niece. She lives far away now." The alien girl touched her own chest softly, then pointed to the screen. Raylan understood. "You want a place like that?" She nodded. He looked at her again. No name, no home, no family. But she was alive. And she was here. Raylan stood up and walked to the supply box. He pulled out a thermal blanket, pink, with small stars on it. It was one of the last gifts he had received from Earth. He wrapped it around her. "This is yours now," he said. Her fingers touched the stars on the fabric. She looked up at him. "Lan?" she asked shyly. He smiled. "Yes, that's me." Then she said something soft, barely a whisper. "Papa?" Raylan's smile faded, replaced with something deeper. He didn't know what to say. He hadn't heard that word in years. She was just a child, lost, alone, and maybe, in her heart, trying to hold on to something. Someone. He didn't correct her. He just said, "Rest now. Tomorrow we move. I'll find help." She nodded and curled into the blanket. She didn't speak again, but as she fell asleep, her fingers stayed wrapped around his. And for the first time, Raylan felt like maybe, just maybe, he wasn't alone either. The next morning, the sky above the frozen planet had cleared, but the air was still biting cold. Raylan stepped out of the crawler briefly, checking the storm damage. The ice was thick over the ground, and deep cracks stretched across the hills. Where the storm had slammed hardest, he glanced around. All was still, quiet, too quiet, when he returned inside. The alien girl, who still hadn't told him her name, was sitting upright, her eyes watching him like a silent shadow. "Morning," Raylan said gently. "You feeling better?" She nodded. Her cheeks looked warmer now. She had wrapped the star blanket around her body like a shield. Raylan handed her a warm ration. She took it with both hands and nibbled like a small animal. "We're heading out soon," he told her. "I'll get us to the outpost." "They'll help." Her head tilted. "Outpost?" she asked. "Humans, my people. They have supplies, warm beds, medicine, maybe even answers." She looked uncertain but didn't say no. Raylan packed his gear, scanning the area one last time. He loaded coordinates into his crawler, setting it to follow the narrow pass through the glacier cliffs. That's when it happened. Beep. His motion sensor lit up. Raylan froze. The scanner showed something large moving across the ridge to the north. Slow, careful steps. Not an animal. Footsteps. He quickly turned off all interior lights and lowered the crawler's external heat signature. The girl looked at him with wide eyes. She could feel something was wrong. "Quiet," he whispered, pressing a finger to his lips. He peeked through the frost-covered window. Shadows moved outside. Two tall figures, clad in silver-gray armor. Their helmets glowed with red sensors. Their boots left deep prints in the snow. Not rescue, not human, hunters. Raylan's blood ran cold. These weren't search parties, they were trackers. And they weren't looking for him. They were looking for her. The girl saw the shapes too and went stiff. Her whole body shook, not from cold, but fear. She grabbed his arm tightly. "Catchers," she whispered, her first alien word, not translated, not taught. Just truth. Raylan didn't move. His mind raced. Catchers could mean slavers. Or worse, those who captured children like her for sale or experiments. The branded mark on her arm made sense now. She wasn't just a runaway. She was valuable. Or dangerous. Or both. The soldiers outside paused near the crawler. One of them turned his head slowly toward the vehicle. The red sensor on his helmet glowed brighter. Raylan held his breath. The girl buried her face in his side, trying not to cry. The soldier raised a scanner and pointed it at the crawler. Raylan quickly reached under the panel and activated his field. Disruptor, a stolen piece of tech from years ago. It masked heat signals and scrambled weak scanners for 30 seconds. The tracker's device blinked, then beeped red. The soldier lowered it and shook his head. Then, after a tense moment, both figures turned and began walking away, vanishing into the ice fog. Raylan exhaled slowly. The girl didn't move. She was still holding onto him tightly. "It's okay," he whispered. "They're gone." But she shook her head. "No gone," she said. "Always come back." Raylan stared at her. There was no fear in her eyes anymore, only sadness. Like someone who had been hunted before and knew how it ended. He leaned back and looked at her closely. "You know them?" She nodded. "Took Mama." Raylan clenched his fists. The pieces were falling into place. Her mother had been taken by those soldiers, or maybe killed. The girl had escaped, or had been left behind, and now they were hunting her. And Raylan? He had just made himself a target too. He stood and opened the storage bin. "We're not staying here," he said. "We leave now." He packed the food, tools, weapons. He wrapped the girl in an extra thermal layer and handed her a small oxygen mask. She obeyed without a word, as if she had done this before. "Do you want to go back to them?" he asked her carefully. She looked up and said clearly, "No." "Then stay close to me." The crawler roared to life, moving across the ice, headed toward the southern cliffs. The fastest but most dangerous way to reach the outpost. Raylan checked the scanner again. No movement. But he didn't trust it anymore. He glanced at the girl sitting beside him, her tiny hands holding the edge of her blanket. "What do I call you?" he asked. "What's your name?" She looked at him for a long time, then said softly, "No name." He blinked. "No name at all?" She nodded. "Only tag." Raylan shook his head. "You need a real name," he said. "Something strong. You survived the storm, outsmarted the catchers." He paused, then said, "Asha, what about that?" She blinked again. "Asha?" "It means hope," Raylan said, "in one of our languages." The girl thought for a moment, then gave a tiny nod. Her lips moved. "Asha." The name sat gently in the air. Raylan smiled. "Then Asha it is." Outside, the storm was gone. But the real danger had just begun. The crawler raced across the cracked surface of Thraxis, leaving a long trail in the snow. Raylan gripped the controls tightly, his eyes moving between the frozen road and the scanner. Asha sat beside him, silent but alert, wrapped in her star blanket. They didn't speak much after the catchers almost found them. Words weren't needed. The fear in both their eyes said enough. Raylan knew the outpost was still far at least. 3 days away. But after what happened, staying on the open path was too dangerous. The soldiers might return with better tech, better tracking dot, so he turned off the main route. "We'll go through the caves," he said. Asha looked at him with wide eyes. "Caves?" He nodded. "It's risky, but safer than being hunted in the open." The frozen caves of Thraxis were natural tunnels deep under the surface. Some were thousands of years old. Some collapsed without warning. And some held secrets no one ever talked about. But Raylan had no choice. The sun dipped below the icy cliffs as they approached a narrow opening hidden behind broken stone. Raylan stopped the crawler, packed supplies, and scooped Isha into his arms. "It's okay," he whispered. "I've got you." The cave entrance was dark, with icicles hanging like teeth. The moment they stepped inside, the temperature dropped even lower. Asha shivered, clutching his jacket. Raylan turned on his chest light, and the beam cut through the darkness. Ice walls sparkled like glass. Every step echoed like a drum. They walked deeper. Strange sounds filled the tunnels, cracks, distant thuds. Whispers carried by the wind. Asha pressed closer to him. "Monsters here?" she asked softly. Raylan gave her a brave smile. "Not if I'm with you." After an hour of walking, They stopped near a curved wall where old alien symbols were etched into the ice. Raylan had never seen this writing before. He scanned it. Translation failed. These tunnels were built by someone long ago, he muttered. Asha stepped closer to the wall. She touched the symbols with her small fingers. As she did, something strange happened. The wall shimmered faintly under her touch. Raylan watched with wide eyes. "Do you know this?" he asked. She shook her head. "Feels familiar." Suddenly, the scanner beeped. Raylan pulled it out. Movement behind them. He turned off his light. Darkness swallowed everything. He pulled Asha behind a large block of ice. They crouched low. A faint light flickered in the distance. Not natural, mechanical, a red glow. The catchers were in the tunnels. Raylan's heart pounded. How did they trap them here? He held Asha close, his hand gently covering her mouth to keep her quiet. She didn't fight. She trusted him now. The sound of footsteps echoed closer. Raylan reached for his blaster. It wasn't much, just an old energy pistol, but it might buy them time. Then, the footsteps stopped. Silence. Raylan waited. Asha didn't breathe. Minutes passed. Finally, the light disappeared. No more sound. He waited longer, just in case, then whispered, "We move," quietly. They took a side tunnel, one that sloped down into deeper levels. The air grew colder, the walls thicker with frost. Asha stumbled once. Raylan caught her. "We're almost there," he said, though he wasn't sure. The caves twisted like a maze. Then, ahead, a dim natural light appeared. Not daylight, but glow rock, a rare mineral that lit up under certain energy. Raylan stepped forward and gasped. They had entered a wide cavern. A massive underground lake lay frozen, and in the center stood a tall crystal pillar glowing softly. Around it were broken machines, ancient, alien. Asha walked toward the pillar. "Asha, careful!" Raylan called, but she didn't stop. She touched the crystal. A soft pulse ran through the air. A hologram appeared, floating lines of data, spinning symbols, and a map. Raylan ran up beside her. "What is this?" The hologram displayed several planets. Thraxis was one of them. Next to it, red warnings blinked. Then the image zoomed in, showing a slave route, trafficking paths between systems. Her species, her people, were targets. Raylan stared in horror. "You were being moved along this route," he said. "Your mother must have tried to stop it." Asha looked up at him, her eyes shining with tears. "Mama hid me. Said they come, told me to run." Raylan's jaw tightened. "They were going to sell you," she nodded. "But Mama didn't make it." He knelt and pulled her into his arms. She cried quietly into his coat. "I'm so sorry," he whispered. Then, another sound echoed behind them, a blast. The catchers had found the crystal chamber. Raylan picked Asha up and ran. There was no time to study the machines. No time to gather proof. He just had to get her out. He found a narrow exit at the far wall, barely wide enough. He squeezed through, scraping his shoulder, but they made it. The next tunnel led upward. Cold wind blew from the top. "We're getting close to the surface," he said. Asha coughed. "Tired. I know. Just a little longer." Behind them, faint voices shouted in a strange alien tongue. The catchers were still chasing. Raylan didn't stop. Not for a second. They reached the end of the tunnel. Daylight. He pushed through and burst out onto the snowy hillside. The mountains stretched ahead. A single smoke signal blinked faintly in the sky, the human outpost. "We made it," he said, breathless. But behind him, he could still hear the footsteps coming. Raylan stumbled through the snow, each step slower than the last. His arms were burning, but he held Asha tightly against his chest. Her small body had grown colder again, and her breathing was weak. The wind blew sharp as knives, biting his face, and his boots cracked through thin ice with every step. The sound of distant voices still echoed. The catchers hadn't given up. But ahead, hope flickered. A tiny dot of smoke rose into the gray sky just above the mountains. That was the human outpost. If they could reach it, they'd be safe. "Usha," Raylan said, his voice dry and raspy. "Stay with me. We're almost there." She blinked up at him with half-closed eyes. Her lips barely moved. "Cold. I know. I'm sorry. Just a little longer." They reached a flat stretch between cliffs where the snow was deeper and the wind stronger. The sun had vanished behind clouds. Raylan felt his knees buckling, but he refused to stop. Then suddenly crack, the ground beneath him gave way. Raylan shouted as he and Asha dropped into a hole, tumbling through hard-packed snow and ice. They hit the bottom with a thud. Raylan groaned in pain. His shoulder had slammed into a rock. But Asha, she wasn't moving. "Asha!" he cried, gently shaking her. "Come on, open your eyes." She stirred weakly but didn't speak. Raylan looked around. They had fallen into a shallow pit between cliffs. The wind above howled, but down here it was still. Trapped. He checked his scanner. It was broken. Smashed in the fall. No signal. No help. Raylan pulled off his coat and wrapped it around Asha, leaving himself exposed. He took out a small emergency heater from his belt and activated it. Pressing it close to her chest, he whispered, "I'm not letting you die. Not after everything." But he could feel the cold sinking into his bones now. His fingers were numb. His vision blurred, and then something growled. Raylan froze. The sound came from the shadows of the pit. He turned slowly and saw glowing yellow eyes watching them from the darkness. Ice beast. Native predator of Thraxis. Sharp fangs, white fur, nearly invisible in the snow. The creature stepped forward slowly, sniffing the air. Raylan stood in front of Asha, pulling out his energy pistol with shaking hands. "Back off," he growled. The beast snarled, stepping closer. Raylan fired once the shot missed. Weak and off target, the beast lunged, but Raylan didn't run. He stood his ground, shielding Asha with his body, aiming again. Then boom. A burst of fire exploded from the side of the pit. The beast screeched and ran. Raylan turned in shock. Woman in white armor stood above, aiming a large plasma rifle. Her human face appeared beneath her helmet. "Hold on," she shouted. "Where?" "With the outpost." Raylan's knees gave out in relief. Within minutes, a rope dropped. 2 soldiers climbed down. A third carried a medical pack. Asha was lifted out first, wrapped in thermal sheets. Raylan followed, half-conscious, barely able to speak. They were taken into a warm transport vehicle and rushed toward the outpost. The world returned slowly. Raylan opened his eyes to warm light and soft beeping. He was lying on a medical bed. Bandages wrapped his shoulder, and 4 was in his arm. A familiar sound made him turn his head. Asha sat beside the bed, wrapped in fresh clothes. She looked clean, safe, and alive. Her star blanket was folded on her lap. She smiled. "You came back," Raylan whispered. She nodded. "You saved me." "No," he said softly. "You saved me." A nurse walked in. "She wouldn't leave your side," she said with a smile. "She kept saying, 'My papa.'" "Fix him." Raylan chuckled weakly. The nurse continued, "Your girl is strong, but she needs protection. The symbol on her arm matches records from an illegal alien trafficking ring. The outpost captain wants to speak to you." Raylan nodded. "I'll speak to him." Later that night, Raylan sat by the window with Asha in his lap. Snow fell softly outside, but inside it was warm, safe. She leaned her head on his chest and whispered, "Is this home?" Raylan didn't answer at first. Then he said, "Wherever we're together, that's home." She closed her eyes with a small smile. For the first time in her life, she didn't feel like property or prey. She felt like a child, and he, once a lonely explorer, felt something he hadn't in years, like a father. Raylan sat stiffly in the outpost commander's office, his arm still wrapped in bandages. The room smelled like metal and disinfectant. Behind the desk sat Commander Weiss, a tall man with sharp eyes and no smile. 2 soldiers stood at the door. Asha sat quietly beside Raylan, holding the edge of his coat like it was her only anchor in the world. "I read your report," Weiss said coldly. "You brought an undocumented alien child from a restricted zone. No passport. No ID, no species tag. Nothing." Raylan didn't move. She was dying in the snow. "She's also a runaway," Weiss said. He tapped on the screen in front of him. "That symbol on her arm? She was part of a shipment confiscated property during an interstellar raid. You know what that means?" Raylan nodded slowly. "It means she was being trafficked. It also means," Weiss said, leaning forward, "that someone powerful out there wants her back." The room grew quiet. Weiss continued. "An official claim has already been made. A ship from House Dratha is on the way to pick her up." Raylan blinked. "House what?" "Dratha, old alien empire. Royal bloodlines. They've demanded her return." Raylan clenched his fists. "She's not cargo," he said. "She's a child. She has a name now. Asha." Weiss looked unmoved. "That's not how the law works. She's listed as property. A lost asset. The request is backed by galactic law." "She's not an asset," Raylan growled. "She's a person. A scared little girl." Weiss tapped his desk again. "You're not her biological relative. You have no adoption rights, no species agreement. If you try to interfere, we're required to detain you." Asha looked up at Raylan. She didn't understand everything, but she understood enough. Her grip on his coat tightened. Weiss stood and crossed his arms. "You've done your part, Raylan. You saved her. Be proud of that. But now let her go." Raylan didn't answer. He just looked down at Asha, her small hands, her soft glowing eyes, the scarred brand on her arm. He remembered the moment she had whispered, "Papa," for the first time. And he knew one thing clearly. He couldn't give her up. That night, the outpost lights dimmed as power was shifted to night mode. Asha lay curled up on a cot in the medical room, wrapped in her star blanket. Raylan sat nearby, staring at the ceiling, thinking. He knew what would happen if the alien ship arrived. She'd be taken away, either sold again or locked in a golden cage and raised like a political trophy. She'd never be free. He stood up and looked at her. "Asha," he whispered. She opened her eyes slowly. "Yes, Papa?" His throat tightened. "We have to go," he said. She blinked. "Go where?" "Somewhere. They can't take you. Will you come with me?" He smiled. "I'll never leave you." 30 minutes later, alarms sounded across the outpost. Unauthorized departure in Sector 7. Hangar breach repeat. Breach in Hangar 3. Raylan drove the crawler he had repaired earlier, pushing it through the small opening of the service gate. Asha sat beside him, her eyes wide but calm. They sped into the frozen night, leaving behind lights, laws, and orders, back toward the wild, toward freedom. Raylan didn't know where they would go. The galaxy was big, but they had to stay hidden. At least for now. He activated a satellite beacon, not to call for rescue, but to send the data he had downloaded from the cave crystal. The trafficking routes, the symbol. The corruption behind House Dratha's ownership of innocent lives. If he couldn't fight them with weapons, he'd fight them with truth. The signal uploaded, and the galaxy would soon know. Days passed. Raylan and Asha traveled through abandoned paths and quiet valleys. They found shelter in old mining stations, shared food, and told stories at night under the stars. Asha laughed more now. She had even painted a small name on the crawler. Dor, Ashlyn, a mix of Isha and Raylan, their new ship. Their new life. But danger still followed. News spread. The media was talking about a human who escaped with a royal alien child. Some called him a criminal. Others called him a hero. But to Asha, he was just Papa. And that was all that mattered. One quiet evening, as they sat near a silent lake, Asha leaned against him. "Papa?" Yes, if I had never met you, would I still be in that cage? Raylan didn't answer at first. Then he said, maybe, but you met me. And now you're free. She looked up with a small smile. I don't want to go back. I want to stay with you forever. Raylan touched her cheek softly. You already are. Asterisk, the stars above shimmered like ice crystals, quiet and endless. Asha lay curled beside Raylan under the curved window of their tiny shelter, far from the outpost, far from the frozen wastelands. The wind whispered gently outside, but there was peace here finally. Raylan stirred the small campfire with a metal stick. The flames danced inside the heater dome, casting a soft orange glow across the room. Asha was drawing again. She had found a broken screen and used her fingers to sketch simple shapes. Stars, a ship, two small figures, one tall, one tiny holding hands. Raylan smiled. You're getting better, he said softly. Asha looked up. That's us, I guessed. I added Mama too, she said quietly, pointing at a third figure in the corner. Her eyes lowered. I still miss her, Raylan nodded slowly. You always will, and that's okay. Silence fell again, but this time it was comfortable. Then a soft ping echoed from Raylan's compad. A transmission. He checked it, and his heart skipped a beat. It was a message. Not from the outpost. From Earth. The Galactic Protection Agency had seen his broadcast. The evidence from the crystal caves, the proof of slave routes, the corrupted mark on Asha's arm, and the data trail from House Dratha had gone viral. People were outraged, and now the Council had officially declared Asha a free being. Raylan read the message twice before turning to her. Asha, he whispered, they can't take you anymore. You're free. She blinked. Really? He nodded. You're not their property, not a thing. You're a person now. In the eyes of the whole galaxy. Asha smiled so wide that her little teeth showed, but then her face grew serious. Does that mean we stop running? Raylan exhaled, long and slow. Maybe. We'll still be careful. But now we can start building something better. A home. A real one. Over the next few days, things changed. They found an old abandoned greenhouse station at the edge of a warmer valley, where ice melted into gentle streams. Raylan fixed its systems, little by little, solar panels. Clean water, enough to live quietly. Asha started planting things. Simple seeds, earth vegetables, alien fruits. She named each plant and talked to them like friends. Raylan watched her grow stronger every day. She laughed more. She dreamed out loud. She even started teaching him her alien numbers. But one night, he found her sitting by herself under the stars, hugging her knees. He walked over and sat beside her. What's wrong? Asha looked up with glassy eyes. I'm scared. Of what? She took a deep breath. What if you go away too? Like Mama. Raylan didn't speak right away. He looked at the stars. Then he said softly, I can't promise I'll live forever, Asha, but I can promise you something else. She looked at him, waiting. He turned to her, and in that moment, he wasn't just a protector or a traveler. He was something deeper. Asha, he said, I vow to be your father. Not just for now, not just to keep you safe, but truly, forever. Wherever we go, whatever we face, I'll be by your side. Asha's lip trembled. Really? I will fight for you, teach you, laugh with you, hold you when you're scared. And one day, when you're strong enough to stand on your own, I'll still be cheering for you. Tears rolled down her cheeks. Papa. She reached out and hugged him tight, and Raylan hugged her back, his eyes wet, but his heart full. Weeks passed. Their little home in the valley became a real place. They called it New Haven. Sometimes travelers passed by, refugees, orphans, lost beings with no one to care for them. Raylan welcomed them. Asha gave them food and told them stories, and one by one, others stayed. What started as a shelter became a small community. one built not by law or species, but by kindness, by love, by a human who had no family, until he found a child shivering in the ice, and by a child who had no name, until he gave her one. Years later, Asha stood at the edge of the greenhouse field, taller now, her hair longer, her eyes brighter. She looked out at the mountains and smiled. Behind her, children played, laughter filling the air. And from the old wooden house, Raylan stepped out, gray in his beard, slower in his steps, but with the same strong voice. "Dinner's ready." Asha turned and laughed. "I'm coming, Papa." In the end, the story of the girl in the ice and the man with no past became a legend across the colonies. They said that love didn't need blood, that family didn't need matching skin, and that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is choose to stay.